Hello and welcome back to OT the Podcast, where we talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. My name is Felix Schultz, and with me is the charming, iridescent, and verdacious
Andy Green. Haven't had an intro like that in a while. Felix, how you going?
Pretty good. I think I made the word verdacious up. It's kind of like verdant and bodacious.
Sounded real to me. So maybe it's the word of the year for 2023. How you going? You sound like you've had 3 to 4 cups of coffee, and it's not even 9 a.m.
Not that much. I don't know. You just got me in a good mood. Perhaps because we're speaking to a pretty charming guest, pretty funny. I'm going to say funny. Knowledgeable about the world of weird watches and odd cars.
Well, if he's so great, why don't you start a podcast with him?
I mean, he doesn't really want me.
Wouldn't say no. Today's guest is, of course, Phil Toledano, Mister Enthusiast, if you follow him on Instagram. I'm sure he's got an artist name as well. It's probably Phil.
I think it's Phil Toledano. I think
Philip.
That's it.
Phil T.
Yeah, Filthy Phil.
Maybe not. He's a great guy. We had him on a couple of years ago. Record downloads, streams on that episode.
That's. We should have got him on sooner, but we've both been so busy, collectively conquering the world of podcasting in our own respective niche interests.
Is he like the Pedro Pascal of watches?
Oh, that's a.
Tell me I'm wrong.
He's. Yeah, he's pretty. Yeah, either that. He's not quite the Jeff Goldblum. He's more Pedro.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Let's. That's the episode title.
Let's watch Daddy.
Speaking of the Pedro Pascal of watches, I promised last week I made some grand statements, and now I'm here to deliver on them, Andy.
Which ones would they be?
Tank Francais.
Of course, you've gone hands-on. You're one of the few people on the planet to go hands-on.
I don't know about that. I've seen it popping up on the internet all over the shop. The recording we made last week was not interrupted by the courier company, but shortly afterwards I received a package of 3 watches. 2 of those watches wouldn't have fit me. There was a lovely gold and diamond covered watch that I was sad they didn't make in the large size.
Sounds perfect for you.
Yeah, I'll do it. But there was a large Tank Francais. I'm really struggling. I'm thinking of, Cartier's brand guidelines. And then I'm remembering that I don't work for Cartier. So I'm okay to say Tank Frank. It's not what it's called, but I feel it's the Australian way. So this watch is an update of the Tank Francais, first released 1996, made famous by the late great Princess Diana of Wales, amongst other cool and stylish people. This is it's not really a massive overhaul on the design front. I would say more a smart and subtle update, bringing it into line with contemporary tastes and trends.
Some tweaks.
Yeah, it was showing its mid-90s design a little bit, and then they haven't gotten rid of that with this new version, but they've sort of, as they would say on, I don't know, a cooking show, elevated it.
Mid-90s are back anyway.
Sorry, what?
The mid-90s are back.
Yeah, but they're back in an elevated way, Andy. Don't you watch mid-90s cooking shows? It's all about pesto.
Ready, steady, cook.
Oh, mate. Oh, Team Capsicum all the time.
I love it. So what stood out about the new Tank Franks?
Well, I mean, there's a few. All up, it's a more substantive feeling package. They've done a lot of work on the bracelet. It feels nicer. It looks nicer. The big thing for me, and I've read some stuff around it. I hadn't really thought about this. So the Tank's a square watch, yeah, or rectangular. But by adding on the angles on the ends of the brain cards and keeping that angle in the end pieces of the bracelet, this is the first Tank, by the way, with an integrated bracelet design. Fun fact. It gives it almost a hexagonal sort of flavor, which is a really interesting geometry that they've extended this time around. Like the edge pieces of the bracelet links, can't recall if they're polished. They keep that sort of angled edge to them, giving it a more cohesive look overall. The
Mm.
other big change is that the crown has sort of been recessed into the profile of the case, so it's not as sticky outy as it was.
Well, that's interesting. Sort of looks
Yeah,
like it's got more of a presence, like a little bit bigger, but I think it's probably the proportions and the design just tweaking a little bit that visually makes it look a little larger.
it just looks more modern. Like, I mean,
Mm.
that's if you might not notice the differences individually. Like, if I put one picture up of an old one up and a new one, you wouldn't necessarily go, "Oh, that's the new one, that's the old one." But if you put them next to each other, you would be able to tell. I think that's
Sort of like a change, like an automotive change, where it's just the new generation of the
yeah.
tank.
Yeah, it's the 911 is the same car, but it looks different over the years.
I'm interested to see what they do with the rest of the year, Felix, because it's January. They've come out the gates with an update to the tank, but I'm just they've had such a strong, life as a brand. But I think the last couple of years have really gone Cartier's way,
Yes.
and I'm excited to see what they release this year. Genuinely,
Well, that's it. That's also where we're beginning to get to that most magical time of the year, Andy, where watches and wonders is the word of the word and the ampersand of the hour. So yeah, that speculation is starting to run rife. Hopefully, we'll be able to tell you closer to the date what we can kind of expect out of it. But yeah, Tag Frank, check it out. I put some little videos up on our Instagram, and yeah, we can. If anyone's fascinated by it,
I'm sure
check
you'll be able to check it out
out
in person.
or Discord. Yeah.
No, I'm sure you'll be able to see them in person. Hey, we were talking about daddies before.
Yes.
You're a daddy.
Am I? I am. Yes, I have a child.
Daddy's a state of mind.
Yes.
Famously said by Pedro Pascal in a now viral clip. Bit of a phenomenon, Pedro. He has apparently, I don't know if it's right because I read it on the internet, but apparently he's not been in a show that has less than like an 89 or a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score.
He was in Buffy.
And what's the score?
Hang on. You keep talking your waffle about whatever you're talking about.
Anyway, as I'm sure a lot of people now know, The Last of Us, the very popular video game series, has become a TV series. It's got Pedro in it, a bunch of other great actors as well. I think the first 2 episodes are out by the time this comes out. The third might be, or it might not be. Depends when we get around to publishing it. Off the bat, there's a watch story arc in there.
Oh,
which is a bit of a thing with video games. There's always it's so symbolic of like that memento or that heirloom, or whenever the world is ending, there's always that sort of watch tie-in.
It can be visible on the character fairly easily.
It can be visible. It's portable. The world's ending. It's on your wrist. It's going to be something that when the world ends, it's going to be useful, and can feasibly kind of carry you through. But really solid show so far. I'm going to have to download the game. I know there's a PS5 version that was released in September last year, probably in anticipation of the show coming out. But really solid so far. Pretty stressful.
Yeah, Naughty Dog did some good storytelling there.
Yeah, pretty stressful, but Pedro absolutely kills it.
I love it. Hey, so quick question about this Pedro's star maker status in Hollywood. Are we talking Rotten Tomatoes audience or critic?
Audience, I think.
Buffy as a whole sneaks in at 93%. It's that one episode cameo that a very young Pedro Pascal did that
There you go. 93%, yeah. So is there anything below 90 or 89%?
I haven't looked at his whole discography, but
yeah, apparently. So either he makes the TV shows amazing, or he picks amazing projects.
He could be the next. He's like Disney's Alan Tudyk.
Yeah, he's just so good. But yeah, I highly recommend you check it out. But yeah, it got me noticing all of a watch storyline in a video game seems like a very solid play, and also the value that people can place on them. Either it's a very expensive watch that is it can be stolen or traded, or it maintains some value regardless. It's sort of like gold, right? But more valuable than gold in any sort of apocalyptic situation.
Well, I mean, that's always that was one of my historical watch nerd icebreakers of what's the perfect watch for an apocalypse.
What is it?
I mean, you can go various ways. You can argue that like a diamond-studded something or other is good because you can just prize the diamonds off and use them as currency. But if you want to, tell the time, it's probably going to be like a G-Shock or something, solar-powered G-Shock.
Yes, well, unless it's some sort of attack that fries
The sun. Oh, electronics. Oh.
Yeah, electronics go out. Solar storm. Yeah, then we're in trouble.
All of those scenarios that we've just brought up were not issues in the TV show I've been watching recently.
What's that?
I finally caught up on season 3 of Dairy Girls. Let me just say, Andy, it is delightful. Delightful.
So what is Dairy Girls?
Dairy Girls is, I did a quick Wikipedia of it before. It is like a BBC 4 show, and it's their most successful show since Father Ted.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember Father Ted, child of the 90s.
Doesn't sound like a show I'd watch.
Ardlo O'Hanlon's big break to fame. It's a show following a group of Catholic schoolgirls in Derry in now I'm going to
Northern Ireland.
I think Northern Ireland now.
It
At the
is,
time,
yeah.
I'm not sure if it was Northern Ireland because my knowledge of Troubles era Irish politics and geography is a little hazy. But that's what it's about. It's kind of like it's a coming of age drama, but it's set against like the quite interesting political backdrop of the Troubles and in sort of the lead up to the Good Friday Accord. And they weave in like it's obviously very funny and pretty light in terms of the cast. The cast is all very good, but they weave in like a lot of really like music of the time and like lots of contemporary pop culture references. Like there's like a festival that Fatboy Slim comes to headline, and like the series cliffhanger of series 2 was Bill Clinton visiting.
Makes sense.
But yeah, series 3, interesting one. Had a little couple of cameos from Liam Neeson. I think everyone in Ireland loves it. Like I think it's whenever I've seen like a panel show with like Graham Norton or anyone else Irish, they just love. Like it really captures the reality of it. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a 90s Australian equivalent for us growing up. Maybe
Neighbours.
more like Heartbreak High.
Oh.
In terms of cool, like the old one, not the new one. But anyway, yeah, it's really good. Watch it. It's fun. It's 20-minute episodes. It's hilarious. Great accents.
All right. Well, Felix, I'm cautious of the time. This is one of those rare occasions where we are actually about to speak to Phil. We're not pretending that we're...
It's been a little while since we've spoken to today's guest. A little under 2 years, I think, since we spoke to New York-based British artist, collector, and man's man about town, Phil Toledano, aka Mister Enthusiast. Since he popped to global superstardom on OT the podcast, he's gone full bastardo. He has a podcast. He has merch. He's got a complete lifestyle brand, and honestly, we're a little bit jealous. Hi, Phil. How are you?
That is all that's missing from that introduction is kettle drums and maybe a brass section.
We'll add it in post.
Yeah. The kettle drums come in later. We're going to open with a trick question. Weird or wonderful?
Weird or wonderful?
Yeah.
That's the question. Well, isn't weird often wonderful?
That's why it's a trick.
Oh, that doesn't look good when I go with the light. That gives me like, yeah.
A shiny forehead.
Yeah, no one wants the supernova forehead. You guys have very nice even lighting.
Because it's daylight here. We're on the other side of the world, Phil, in Australia, and we've caught you your evening, and here it is in the morning.
Yeah, we got up at like 6 a.m. for you, Phil.
Yeah, and then you delayed.
It is what it is. Phil, if we learned anything from our chat with you last time, it's that you see the world in a pretty unique way. So I want to know what your vision is for 2023. Which is the year that we're in, for you, for the things that you're collecting, for the things that you're interested in, what's coming, what's going.
Oh, okay. Well, I think for starters, for watches, what happened over the last couple of years is I got very into 70s Patek. But I think what I'm doing, and I accumulated all these kind of really lovely, very low production number Japanese edition watches, as well as some. The thing about most of what I'm going to say is not going to make sense. I have a feeling, but the thing about 70s Patek I've realized is the stuff that I really want is the kind of crazy stuff with the beautiful integrated bracelets and all that stuff. So the Japanese stuff is really lovely, but it's almost like a gateway drug to 70s Patek because of the 70s Patek stuff. It's quite restrained, and I've realized I want to be less restrained if that's possible. So what I'm doing is I'm selling I've sold most of them now, the kind of more restrained stuff, and I'm going full, is it full ham? Is that what the kids say now?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if the kids say it, but it makes
My
sense.
wife's
Full ham sandwich.
full ham. Yeah, I'm going full ham sandwich on the kind of really sort of unhinged Patek from the 70s. Because for me, that's what's extraordinary about those watches is that, and I don't know if they could. I feel like they couldn't make them now and sell them for a profit. Although, having said that, Patek can do anything really it wants, I guess. But the technology, it's almost like some sort of lost Aztec technology. They can't to make those bracelets is extraordinary, and the craftsmanship, and it's as much about the head of the watch, if not more so, is it about the bracelet. And I really love them, and so that's what I'm kind of veering into now.
I think one of the sort of the through points there in Weird Patek, and it's something I think I saw on your Instagram a little while ago, was Andrew Grima.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And was it Casio or Pulsar that you had that he designed?
No, he did actually, I ended up having. I did Grima would. I feel when you find out something and then you think you're a buffoon because everyone seems to know about it but you.
Often.
I'm sure this has never happened to you guys.
Constantly.
But so Grima was this extraordinary jeweler of the late 60s and early and 70s, and he was he was doing the most amazing stuff. And I'm not really into jewelry. I have no interest in it really. But then I bought the book. I found out some of his stuff. I posted on it on Instagram. Then I started talking to his daughter, who's the loveliest person in the world. We started having this chat about her dad. I bought the book. And when you look at the stuff he was doing, it's total art. It's pure, it's just sculptural. It's incredible. So he had a collaboration with Omega. But the thing was, the deal was that he would do these very low production runs of watches for Omega, on which there would be no Omega on the dial. And then what happened? What people attribute to Grima design watches, like there's a whole bunch of kind of Grima inspired watches. I found out from talking to his daughter that he had nothing to do with those. That was kind of Omega taking the inspiration or the ideas or the feelings behind the Grima stuff and sort of making it into a commercial line. But he didn't do that stuff. He just did the really crazy stuff that doesn't have Omega on the dial.
So my original question, which I feel you're dodging, was about Pulsar. He did like weird ports. Like, were they Grima designs or was that Grima inspired stuff?
The Omega stuff?
No. It was like Casio or something. I could be, mixing up my metaphors here.
You know what? No. Well, he did the Omega collaboration. He might have. I don't think he did. Did he do Pulsar, or was it someone else who did Pulsar?
I'm pulling up the Instagram. Make some small talk while I find the receipts.
Okay. You know what? Pulsar does ring a bell in my threadbare brain. Okay, so that's right. So sorry,
the gouache.
the what?
Isn't that what they call those jewelers' illustrations? A gouache or a?
Well, that's the gouache is the technique. It's the stuff they use to
paint stuff.
Like watercolor, I think. No. Sorry, you're totally right, man. I had that was full aneurysm situation.
Thank you. I feel better about my life now.
In the last 2 years, I've forgotten. My brain has collapsed due to several bouts of COVID. He did do the collaboration with Pulsar. Those are also amazing, and that, oddly enough, well, there's two that inspired me. I would like to. I'm currently in the throes of designing a watch from scratch with a friend of mine in Hong Kong. But when I saw the Grima stuff, in particular the Pulsar stuff, I thought I would have tried my hand at designing something entirely myself that's that sculptural. And I really love what he did with that kind of high-low thing of this. Those things are all solid gold. So he's got this kind of solid gold ziggurat. And then there's this $2 LED, quartz watch movement in it, which is kind of amazing.
Amazing, Phil. The brain fart from both of you guys was just stunning to be here and experience.
No, it was me. Felix, to his credit, he was.
But then he sort of didn't. He lost the confidence in the question.
Well, I mean, when the interviewee goes, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Hang on, mate, totally."
We're in the fast-paced world of social media. You just turn through. So as we've said a few times, it's 2023. I just keep saying it so I don't forget. I think a couple of weeks ago we said. Felix and I said this is a very small bubble that is our lives. 2023 is going to be the year of the four-way collaboration, and it was a joke. But then we started seeing four-way collaborations. So
I don't think we've seen a four-way yet formally.
I think we have. I think one's being announced. Well, it's obviously
could
Nevada
you
Grinch
out of 4 people collaborating?
yep, yeah. It's we're at that point
Specifically on a watch.
What's that?
specifically. Yep. So our question to you, Phil, is if you had to have a four-way, who are the other three
But
watch
I
collaborating
think it's
parties?
the recipe for doom, though. That's like having the 2023 would be the year of the 4-committee collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, to clarify on Andy's point, our initial hypothesis was that it was a very specific set. So it's got to be artist designer, watch brand,
Yeah.
media company, and a retailer. That was the traditional 4-way collaboration. You obviously would be the artist designer, or perhaps a media company.
Yeah, because I'm with my huge Murdoch-like reach.
I don't know if there's a question there.
Actually, I'm not even sure I can answer that. I was going to give my traditional Mister Toledano non-answer about something vaguely tangential and connected, but not really, which is the idea. Have you guys been seeing all these Alan Silverstein collaborations?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about that is I've always been looking at his stuff, right, like from the 80s, and I always thought, it seems sort of slightly too much. But now in the collaborations he's doing, it all seems perfect. Like it seems like maybe it was too much in the 80s, but now collaborating with the contemporary kind of design ideas, it kind of just makes it exactly what it should have always been.
So we got Phil, Elaine Silverstein as the watch brand. Now we need the media outlet and the retailer.
No.
So,
That's a double designer. This is Phil and Elaine, because Elaine's not a watch brand. He's a designer. So you've got 80s designer, contemporary designer.
I'm not even a designer either. I'm more of a kind of a creative director. Like with the, if that does that sound make me sound like a dick? Yeah.
I mean,
you said it
as usual.
You didn't want to say it. But
okay. All right. I've got a related question then. It's another collaboration question. So when we last spoke, I think you were just about to launch the Viva Bastardo brand as we know it today. It's played out quite well. I've got a bit of a two-part question. The first one is, what's the non-mechanic male jumpsuit market like in America and I guess the rest of the world? And the second one is, can we see the Armory Times Viva Bastardo collaboration on perhaps like a Savile Row constructed jumpsuit?
Jeans and Hawks fabric jumpsuits.
Well, okay. Well, that's genius. I mean, you know what? Funnily enough, I did talk to Cho about the idea of doing a jumpsuit, and he was like, "Well, mate, and when you stand it that way, you're doomed." He goes, "Well, mate, do you think?" Basically, the upshot was, I think he felt like no one would want to wear a jumpsuit.
I don't think it's no one wants to wear it. I think a small segment. I think a small segment of people look good in them.
I actually would like to. Okay. First of all, I will say that the jumpsuits, I did 3 runs of jumpsuits.
Yep.
And they all sold out. And I keep getting requests for jumpsuits. Number 2 is, I would say that almost everyone looks good in a jumpsuit.
Really?
Yeah.
So the problem's with me, not the jumpsuit.
What's that?
The problem sits with me, not the jumpsuit.
That's right. That's right.
I don't think I'd look good in it.
I reckon, Andy, if you sort of...
I would take you to Outback Steakhouse on me. Because I know you guys are always eating there, because you're Australian. Isn't that what everyone eats in Australia?
It's the only thing.
Some blooming onions in the freezer for dinner.
That's right. A 12-pack.
So everyone looks good in a jumpsuit. So you've done 3 sold-out runs. There's more jumpsuits coming then.
Well, I have to find it. Well, let me just say, Winston Churchill, he wore a jumpsuit.
We're quoting Winston Churchill.
Well, come on, because you would think he was a larger gentleman, and often it's a larger gent. He says, you've got to be super skinny to wear a jumpsuit, but you actually don't. You look anyone. I mean, it's kind of amazing. A friend of mine is converted to jumpsuits, and he wears them every time I meet him, and he always upstages me now, which is annoying.
You're a hard man to upstage. To be honest, I did buy like a white PPE jumpsuit. I'm ceramic coating a car this week, and so I was like, I'll get a
Bad stuff.
Has COVID vibes to it.
Yeah, but I need I need a mechanic vibe. Okay, all right. Well,
Andy, if we had matching jumpsuits, OT jumpsuits, it could be like I feel like it would be like a Steptoe and Son mechanic sort of situation.
Yeah, we could do like a nice a dusty pink. Have you done dusty pink yet? No, you haven't.
No, but let me just tell you one comment about jumpsuits. The trick with jumpsuits is to avoid looking like it's cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you don't want to get a mechanic's jumpsuit. The one I did for Viva Bastardo was specifically not designed to look like a mechanic's jumpsuit, because then you're pretending to be a mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had that issue. I recently, and this is I don't think I've spoken to you about this, Andy. I recently was in a small country town, and I went to essentially a farming and agricultural workwear store. Like, you could buy sort of grain feed and incredible clothing.
Yep.
Like the price, the quality, the looks, it was all on fire. But I do not think I could wear.
Was it Carhartt?
No. Like all like proper workwear brand, like Ringer shirts and
Kubra.
yeah, there was a Kubra there. A Kubra's pretty fancy. But like this was all like proper like worky stuff, and you just couldn't wear it if you were not of or living off the land, because you'd look like a wanker.
Are you picking up
I
some
don't want
feed?
that.
Pick up some feed.
Did you pick up some feed just as a little snack in the car, just as you're driving? Just
a little bit of grain, a little bit of plant
trail mix,
protein.
some wheat to chew on.
I'm becoming increasingly aware that this podcast is not about watches, and I'd like to bring that back. You've alluded to the fact that you are perhaps making a watch, but I want to take it back another step, and something that we were talking about offline earlier, Phil. You picked up the Renaissance X Alain Silberstein. Is that correct?
Yes.
How is it?
Oh, it's amazing.
And what do you think? This is a very specific one about. This is Alain Silberstein collaboration, but it's not 80s Alain. This is quite a very modern feeling Alain.
Well, as I said, man, I think time has been very good for his artistic evolution. So I've always been a Renaissance fan, and I saw that watch. I missed the drop, and then someone in one of the WhatsApp nerd threads that I'm in was like, "Oh, I want to get rid of this," and I pounced. I mean, you're right in the sense that it's quite different, because it's not. I mean, it's colorful, but he's using different kind of iconography than he normally uses. In fact, he used all the kind of different stuff that he was expected to use, according to the interview with Benoit, the Renaissance geezer. And it's beautiful and interesting and surprising. And I personally think that Renaissance's strength, if I was running Renaissance, because they have this extraordinary design that basically allows for a clear canvas for an artist to use, that no other watch can do that. Every other watch is basically limited to the traditional watch technology. Because Renaissance has this kind of incredible blank canvas, they should be partnering with and all sorts of amazing visual artists to do the thing that Silberstein did. That's what I would be doing.
Is that what you're doing with your watch collaboration?
No, I wish. I mean, I'm doing something very different. The watch I'm making is I basically, what seems to be happening particularly in the independent watch world, is that almost every single watch I see seems to be some sort of skeletonized movement with like floating subdials, and that's it, right? So and everything's. And I'm a big fan of the busy watch, but I feel like that's it's kind of, everyone seems to be doing that. And what I really love about the 70s stuff is the sculptural aspect of 70s watches. So what I'm doing is, it's kind of a collision between Marcel Breuer, Brutalist architecture, and the Rolex Midas.
Ah, okay.
Nice.
So integrated bracelet, super sculptural form, and then, interesting dials made of like meteorite or lapis lazuli or that kind of stuff, but very clean, no branding probably on the dial, just these kind of sculptural thing.
Will they be sold as, your brand? Will they be in collaboration with someone?
Well, I've been working with a friend of mine in Hong Kong. Because I can't really draw, what I would do is I bought some clay, and I was making little clay models of watch heads and taking pictures and then sending them. I mean, it couldn't have been more Dickensian. Like, what's next? Like, have you received my telegram, sir?
You're like an automotive sculptor. That's, you're doing the clay workups. That's fine.
Yeah.
So again, you've done really well not answering Andy's question about, is it another brand, or is this something you're...
It will be its own brand. I'm having a bit of a problem thinking of the name for the brand, so I welcome suggestions.
All right. We'll send you our consultation invoice later, but let's have a quick brainstorm session on the brand name. What are the values you wish your brand to express?
Oh no,
Mission statement.
I don't have a mission statement.
Sculptural.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it looks like nothing else that's really kind of that's out there, which will either be a good thing or a terribly bad thing.
Patek Phil.
That's great. I feel like Thierry Stern would have no problem with that.
I think it'd be fine. I think it just.
Doing.
I don't think they would even notice.
Well, they probably wouldn't actually. Why would they notice?
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you can tell us about the watch, or should we move on?
I think that's it.
Wow.
I mean, it's very interesting. So we're designing a box. The box is made of concrete.
Shipping
So
costs,
it's like cinder. It's like a little cinder.
You'd think the shipping costs would be high, but it's very lightweight, and so it weighs about the same as I mean, have you ever lifted up one of those Patek boxes? They weigh like tons.
How about what you could do is you could chat to Dave Portnoy.
I was thinking that brick watch.
Just rebrand Brick.
The gold brick.
Who's Dave Port?
He's
Brick?
Barstool Sports, and he recently got raked over the coals by watch nerds for selling a very bad, like AliExpress sort of watch for $2,000 or something. Called Brick.
And it's called Brick.
Called the Brick Watch Company or something.
Right. Isn't he getting raked over the coals on a regular basis?
Yeah. And to be fair, he rakes people over the coals as well. I think it's sort of a bit of a relationship he has with Coles. Okay, so you mentioned Mark Cho from the Armory. He was sort of our last guest of 2022. Great guy. We had him on the week that he sold, 90% of his watch collection. You're someone who enjoys a bit of turnover in their cars and in their watches. Were you proud of Mark?
Was I proud of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's funny because I've sold a bunch of watches in the last month or so. First of all, it's always excruciating. I'm such an old geezer. Like, what gets my goat is when people say, "Hey, how much is it?" And then they just disappear. Like, you could just say, "Oh, okay, thanks," or no thanks, or whatever. Or you know what else is where people let me mull it over. Just forget it. Just tell me no.
Just put the phone down, but not hung it up.
Yeah, and then you hear them in the background. That guy's fucking crazy.
It's interesting. People have a bit of, I don't know if it's pride of like, how hard it is to say, "Hey, how much is a watch like this? I've never seen it before. I don't know if I can, if it's in my budget or not."
Yeah.
But people seem to avoid it. So you're proud of Mark. For those that missed the episode, he basically auctioned off sort of 90% of his watches to sort of fund a new, I guess, real estate venture for the business. He's not out of watches, but from a philosophical standpoint, it was quite interesting. And I think if you guys got together, you could write a book maybe like called The Art of Letting Go.
Well, I will say, man, what I was going to say is that I've sold a bunch of stuff, and it's really lovely to sell stuff, actually. And you realize as you're selling stuff, God, all these things, like there are definitely ones that you look at and go, God, I will never sell, well, most likely will never sell that watch. But it's so, this is a horrible word, but it's really liberating to get rid of stuff. And then reshuffle and so go, okay, well, what's exactly, like with the Patek stuff, I really love the 70s. I'm totally committed to the 70s, but I sold a bunch of stuff that I felt wasn't quite 70s enough for me.
How do you go about selling some of the weirder and wackier stuff that's so niche and, it's not, your price, is it a deal of like pricing it right or sort of pricing it what it's worth and waiting for the right person to come along? Like how do you offload a bunch of, weird and uncommon stuff?
It's a good question. It's quite, I mean, with the 70s stuff, the Patek stuff is actually surprisingly easy to sell that stuff. I do find that it's, and I try, when it comes to making money on the watches, I try, like if I'd like to not lose money if possible.
Yep.
But if I'm going to make money, I'm not greedy about it. Like I recently sold a 3579 at a Japanese market that's quite in demand, that they're asking sort of mid to low 20s for that watch. I sold mine, I think, for 16 because the dial wasn't quite perfect. I made a few bucks, but also I realized I could have tried to get more out of it, but I felt like there's no need to be greedy. I don't even know why I'm telling this story.
No, I think that's really, really great to hear because people, and I think it's an important story to tell because people have that perception of like, I've got this watch, I saw it sold once at Phillips for this amount of money, it's worth this much. And that's that's a huge fallacy.
You're absolutely right. It happens. That's hilarious you talk about that, because it happens in cars and in watches.
Sure.
Like, especially in cars, a car will go for 50 grand and then everyone else's car is worth 50 grand, no matter what the condition. So I'm always cognizant of the fact that, is my watch as good as the one that was sold? Is it, is it better, worse, whatever?
And you're not a commercial person trying to make profit. You got to kind of sell it at wholesale, or you're selling it to a dealer or whatever. There's all that stuff comes into play.
Well, usually it's to a regular punter. It's always terrible when you sell to a dealer, because if you sell to a dealer, they're going to sell it for more, so you feel like you're screwing yourself if you sell it to a dealer.
It's also their business, and they're doing the work that you don't want to do. So I want to ask you. You said it feels good to sell stuff. Why? What to you is the nice part or the nice feeling that comes with sort of selling a watch?
Well,
or a car.
The best part of selling, I've sold I think 5 or 6 watches in the last month and a half, and the best part is it gives me mental space to now reconsider where I want to go with what I have. And that's really lovely. Like, suddenly, because I kind of try and limit myself. I've got 3 watch boxes, well, 4 actually, but 3 have real watches in them, and the 4th box has rubbish in it.
Decoy box.
The Patek box is now half empty. So now I go, okay, this is great. Now I can find 5 watches that are more in line with where I want to go with this stuff. And so it gives you you feel like you can be creative again from a collecting standpoint.
And where do you keep these watch boxes?
At Felix's house, in that closet behind the.
Watches aside, it looks like you've been doing a little bit more art lately. You've had a bit, or at least been sharing a bit more of your your artistic works.
He's got to buy the watches somehow.
Yeah, because the art I do funds all the watches. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I did the Viva Bastardo clothing line or brand, whatever you want to call it. That really took over my life in a way that I wasn't that thrilled about, because I am not really I'm not the best person to be running a company that sells stuff, because I'm not very good with. A clothing company, to really be successful and make money, you have to be really good at logistics, production, lead times, planning, all of those things. I am terrible at.
You're more of the creative director.
Yeah, I'm great. But I am good at ideas, and I'm good at, I guess I spent long enough in advertising that I'm good at branding, and I understand what that is. So this year I'm trying to work with some people who will help me with that stuff, and focus more on the art stuff.
Wow.
I like it.
So it's got to be, so it's Bastardo, ex Phil Toledano, ex Sheehan, ex someone else. Nothing. I didn't say anything.
Oh, Felix. Okay, so you came on OT the podcast 2 years ago, and then sure enough, it felt like weeks later, the Viva Bastardo show turned up on our doorstep. Tell us about your podcast. Is it primarily car centric?
It's well, I'll tell you what, man. Clearly, first of all, let me just say, I had no idea you get so loaded, so rich, so quickly from podcasting. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We're on the group chat with Joe.
Just look in Felix's closet. Yeah, it's piles of money.
It's in that closet. It's full of bullion.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a load-bearing turret.
So, aside from the enormous wealth I've amassed, so it's kind of Muskian levels of wealth, let's say.
Lose more money than people can dream of.
Yeah, that's right. Look at me.
Yeah.
The joy of the podcast has been that I get the privilege and to blather to people who I find interesting, or rather hear them blather to me. So it's about cars. It's about watches. Recently, what I've been doing on the car part of it, I've been trying to. I feel like car designers are sort of like film directors, but without any of the credit. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many amazing cars, you just have no idea really who designed it. And so part of the goal of the podcast is to find these people who designed amazing cars and to talk about that experience, what that was like, or where the ideas came from. Actually, last week, I talked to the guy and he was so inspiring. I had on the guy who was head of Hyundai Global Design. And I know it sounds weird, but I'm super into Hyundai now because I feel like they're doing such interesting stuff. The electric cars are so cool.
Yeah, Palisade.
Wait, what? No, the Ioniq 5.
Oh, I mean, I'm into the Palisade.
Do you know what? I don't know what is the Palisade? Is that some?
It's like their SUV. Yeah, apparently it's got like a 2-year wait list over in the States. We've got. Do you have the i30N? That's the hot hatch.
No, I'm talking about all the electric stuff they're doing. The electric stuff's really out. It's just so interesting. But that's the point of that podcast, man. Is I get to blather to people that I find interesting. I mean, I guess isn't that partly what you guys find interesting?
Yeah, 100%.
It's purely money for us.
I use it as an excuse to like ask people questions under the guise of professionalism, whereas I just really want to know the answers. Like I've always wondered, what Watch Executive thinks about this, and I'll just come up with an elaborate excuse to get them on a podcast and ask them a question I'd be too embarrassed to ask over email.
Yeah, and I think you get a lot more out of people in this format than say a written interview. It's a lot, it's there's less vetting. It's a lot more organic. Could be a lot more free flowing. Like you said, cars are interesting. Watches, I mean, you never hear outside of independent brands really who designed the watch.
It's 3
cars. I mean, we had Massimo from Land Rover on probably around the same time we had you on, and I'm sure you know him as well. And just hearing about the process of designing a car or updating a model, and regardless of the icon status or not, it's just you just hear things you don't normally get to hear, and you get to talk to people. And we started talking about watches, and here we are talking about watches. So we haven't deviated too far.
Well, I think it's that process, and it's
Nicely done, Andy.
classic Andy segue.
Just brought you right back. Brought you right back.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing that's cool about podcasting for you guys and for me is that you get to find out the kind of the why and the how, and that's always really interesting to me. Like how did you come up with this idea, or was it I'm always interested in the kind of origin stories of things.
Yeah, the villain origin stories.
And for me, it's the tangential stuff. It's like, oh yes, you know the story, or like you know the story of this design of this iconic watch or car, but then there might be a throwaway line about and then we had to overcome this issue with this third-party supplier from Nicaragua, and you're like, hang on a minute, what's this? And then you go down a beautiful rabbit hole and discover something. Unfortunately, I don't think that's really happened. This episode of the podcast with Phil has been very upfront.
Everything I've said you've heard before.
Speaking of rabbits, I'm sure you guys saw the Frank Mueller streetwear collaboration, and ambitious. It was like 800 pieces with the rabbits fornicating on the dial. Fornicating, as I'll put it PG. So that was one of the new watches we saw for 2023. Phil, you don't really buy new watches.
Was that a Lunar New Year edition, do you reckon?
Oh,
wait, I've got to see that Frank
Mueller. It was this Japanese streetwear brand.
Is it a watch?
It's a watch, yeah, with rabbits smashing on the dial. So you bring that up. You see? Yeah. I think they did like 800 pieces, which surely is what Frank Mueller selling a year. So,
hey, we're hyping Frank Mueller up, Andy. Don't forget Frank.
We'll leave that to everyone else. But yeah, Phil, I think aside from Tudor, I've not really seen you buy new watches lately. Do you think that that's going to change, or are you sort of stuck in your 70s arc?
Wormhole.
Yeah. Like, what would it take for you to buy a new Cartier?
No, I can't buy a Cartier. I can't buy one of those because there is so much buzz around it that immediately I'm not interested. Even though I think that, actually, I think is really cool. I think Hermes, I think they are so imaginative in what they're doing. I feel like, Cartier is fine, all that stuff, but Hermes to me is just, they're really thinking of interesting, beautiful, surprising ideas.
Chanel, I'll check into Chanel as well. They're similar.
Oh, yeah, and Chanel, you're right, and Chanel. Look, I mean, would I buy, I guess, the thing is, I bought a couple of those kind of, I had the Omega 57 Speedy.
That's right. Yep.
And then immediately felt it made me depressed because it's like buying a replica Cobra car. Like I feel like you're driving around that thing and everyone's like, yeah, is that a Cobra? And then you sort of go, well, not really. You know what I mean? All those new watches that look like old watches make me want to have the old watch. But I do like the artistic stuff, like the Silberstein thing, the Resonance, or I mean, I feel like I would love to buy some of the Chanel or those Hermes watches, but I feel like there's so much money, and then I feel like it's kind of like buying a new car. Don't you think there's like 70% of the value the moment that you walk off the lot with those things?
Mm.
I don't know. What do you guys?
Set up some Google alerts for HO8 or whatever it is, and you might get lucky one day. But yeah, 100% on that. One thing that I was literally just messaging this to you yesterday, Andy, and I think Phil's a really interesting person to get a perspective of. I sent you a picture of like an Armani dial Rolex sub from the 70s. It was like beautiful patina, like it was butterscotch,
Very even,
bloom, and it was all. And I looked at it, I'm just like, it doesn't excite me in any way. It looks like, any other Rolex essentially. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have been like, whoa, look at the loom, look at all that. And I don't know if everyone's moved on because that's how it is, or just like a decade of faux Tina has just
You're talking about the
killed vintage. Sorry?
You're talking about tropical fatigue.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that what it is, Phil?
I just made up that phrase.
No, I love it. But you've, the other sort of thing you're low key famous about for watches is, baking your own watches.
Photina. Phil Tina.
I mean, I do think it does seem weirdly odd that every single bloody Rolex sub from the 50s or 60s seems to have a gloriously tropical dial and pumpkin loom and all the rest of that bollocks. It does seem weird, and from what I hear, there's some amazing places in Europe and just churning those dials out.
Some lovely bakeries, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually like to buy a Panerai 210 and then give it the full Bastardo treatment.
Yeah, I think you were talking about that. I think to Felix's point/question is, I think 5 years ago, vintage everything was just crazy, and what I replied to Felix was something along the lines of, it just got to the point where vintage was going up like 25%, 50% every year. You buy a watch and it'd double a year later, and it was just getting out of hand. But it also became so niche and so confusing with, Homer Simpson dials and, Kermit's and Hulk Hogan dials, to quote yourself, Phil, that I think people just kind of got tired, and then the price point became so ridiculous for some of that, double red sea dwellers and, old subs where it was six figures pretty easily, that everyone turned to new, and then all of a sudden we saw AP and Patek get really, really hypey, and that seems to be the focus. So I don't know if it's that or if it's the fatigue from seeing so much faux patina, and that's been...
I think it's that cosplay thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone wants to be a diver or an astronaut.
Yeah, it's like the tool watches out the faux rich...
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, interestingly, I feel that there was this although sadly the one Rolex era that I'm still obsessed with, the pre-Daytona chronographs from the 40s to the 60s stuff, that still that had a brief spark of interest, and then no one's interested anymore, which is good. What I'm happy about, but I think that there was the modern stuff became incredibly valuable, and now it seems like that bubble has really burst. And what I'm hearing is now there's renewed interest in the old stuff, but maybe not the old stuff that it was before, like the bloody tropical extravaganza.
Now it's sort of like 80s, 90s. It's that whole 25-year cycle of Nintendo and even GameCube. So I do think it's interesting. Should we talk about cars?
Nah.
Yeah. I mean,
No?
it is actually interesting though. Sorry, just to go back to that.
Sure.
Haven't all the modern Rolex steel sports watches, haven't they all kind of plummeted in value now?
Yeah, I mean, basically all the hype stuff is down probably 40 or 50% on 12 months ago.
Have they plummeted, or have they...
Sorry, Felix.
Look, a great, the John Mayer Daytona was $250,000 Australian dollars at one point. Now it's $100,000, so it's still double retail, but 5 times retail to 2 times retail is that's a market fluctuation, but it's still an incredibly desirable watch that sells for a ridiculous premium. Even at double retail, I think it's stupid. So yeah, I think that's just attention shifting. Probably global markets playing a pretty strong part.
To learn from that, which I've always tried to adhere to in any kind of collecting, is no matter what price point you're at, always buy rare. And none of that shit was ever rare.
No, not mass produced. It's mass produced. How can it be rare?
Maybe the gem set.
Gem set, yes. Gem set.
But like for instance, you could buy that Omega black tulip ceramic did quartz watch from '83. It's super rare and it costs $2,500, and it's really
Damn.
really cool and really beautiful. So I always feel that there's safety in rarity.
Yeah, but then there's also dangers, and I think this is a question I had that was more automotive skewed. But you're a big Maserati guy. You like Italians. You got the Shamal.
Man.
You like Italian things.
I've only ever owned one Maserati my entire life.
But you like Italian things. You like nice things. But you've got your Shamal, and you're doing the renders of the different colors for it. You really, you did something really interesting to it that I want to ask you about in a second. But it's a rare car. Maserati, famously expensive, famously unreliable, allegedly unreliable. I've not owned one. You've owned more than I have. But what's the reality of owning, a car like that is so rare, that's, a bit old, that I'm sure parts do not exist for?
Well, I've made a specialty for the last 15 years. I've owned, not to sound this is going to make me sound like a dick again. I've owned a lot of really, really rare things. For which there's always people who have parts. There's always you can always find parts for things, and when you've owned a bunch of stuff that's really rare, you just get used to the idea that you have to root around, you have to make an effort. There's always some guy who knows a guy who's got like a stash of parts, and he'll sell them to you for a vast sum of money or not. But the thing about if you wanted the thing I have that's really rare is the De Tomaso Guara. So in the case of that car, I box myself into a corner of so rare that no one really knows what it is, and I will lose my shirt on it if I want to sell it. And you could almost say the same. I'm not sure that the Shamal will, even though it's really rare, it sort of ticks the boxes, designed by Gandini, really cool to look at, amazing to drive, all that stuff. I'm not sure it'll ever be a super expensive car, just because I feel like there's just very specific time periods for which Maserati will always be valuable, and that will be the 50s and the 60s and maybe a bit early 70s, and that's it. Everything they did thereafter was, very patchy at best. I mean, the Shamal is an amazing thing, but it's kind of this one blip at the end of the 80s.
It's such a gorgeous sort of boxy design. And one of the things you did to it that really stood out was I think you took the tint off, right?
What tint?
Was there tint on the windows?
Oh, there were tinted windows. The windows were tinted, yeah.
You took the tint off?
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting because it was, and I can't remember what you said about it when I think you posted a video of you removing it or no tint, but it really struck me because, blacking out a car, headlights, putting tint on it seems to be, it's like new car 101, and then here you are taking it off. And it completely changed the look into that sort of fishbowl, stare straight in, almost a bit old Land Rover-y or Range Rover-y vibes. What was the logic there? You just hated the look of the tint?
Yeah, because it was just, I'm not a big fan of black cars because I feel like it's just all red cars, but black, it feels like it's like wearing shades indoors.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just trying a bit too hard. So that was how I felt about the tint on the Shamal. It was like wearing shades indoors. It was just trying too hard. Plus, the interior is so incredible. Why wouldn't you want to and it changed the physicality of the car, because when you remove the tint, it made the car less of a kind of black blob and gave it more shape, because you could see the inside. It was white. It just changed the shape.
Less aggressive. It sort of brightened things up. But that's a boxy car. You have your Evo as well, which I've seen. I think you're selling. How much?
The Pajero?
Yeah.
Oh,
Pajero.
Pajero. I'm selling for $65,000.
Okay, US?
Yeah, but okay, it seems like a strong price, but I'll explain why. So, for instance, one sold a couple of weeks ago on Bring a Trailer for $50,000.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. So therefore, but I will say this, that had 75,000 miles, but I will say this, my car has 48,000 miles, and most importantly, it's a stick shift.
Manual, silver, very boxy.
But
one owner, drove it only on Sundays.
An old lady owner, yeah.
No, but the stick shift is super rare. They made 2,500 Pajeros, of which 600 were stick.
So what's the plan? You're going to get rid of it and do what?
Well, weirdly enough, even though I really love the Shamal, I was thinking, what if I sold the Pajero and the Shamal And then this is going to sound stupid. I have this peculiar kinky fetish for the Audi R8 first gen stick.
Yes, that's a good call. A little bit underrated, a little bit undervalued.
Well, it's really beautiful. I mean, look, the Shamal honestly is one of the best cars I've ever driven. It's crazy how enjoyable it is to drive. Like, just the sound of it, it's nuts. But I've only owned one other semi-modern car, which is a 2007 Aston Martin Vantage, which I traded in part for the best deal of my entire life. I did a partial trade for that car plus cash for a Lancia Stratos. I couldn't even believe that trade was happening.
That was your James Bond era.
I mean, what's that, man?
Your James Bond era.
Yeah.
Villain era.
Suits and Aston Martins. Okay. All right. So a bit of an interesting path.
You know, the other thing is I quite like the Ferrari 360. I've always loved that car, and I was horrified and appalled to find that they've really gone up in price in the last year or two since I looked. But I just think those are much more beautiful than the 355, which have gone mental.
Well, I feel like you have a bit of a Ferrari missing from your life. I think you've got fond memories of, the early days of Mister Enthusiast.
I've never owned a Ferrari.
Didn't you own one?
I had a Dino and I had a 308 GT4, both of which were Dino badge cars. They weren't Ferrari badge cars.
Oh.
So Ferrari badge car.
And for someone that famously loves the Italians.
Mm.
I mean, I don't actually famously love the Italians. I just love cars.
Just a big fan. All right, Phil.
It's a Spanish name. You know that. It's a Spanish name. Everyone always thinks it's bloody Italian. It's Spanish.
I did not know that.
White Lotus Season 3 cameo.
What's that?
Yes, I can see it.
Little cameo in White Lotus Season 3, Phil.
Oh, God, that's so good.
It's an amazing show. Yeah. All right, we wrap our episodes. We ask for a recommendation, what you've been enjoying. I want to hear the secret to staying young and youthful and energetic. And I want a recommendation from you.
You're asking me for the secret to youth?
Yeah, look at you. Look at you. What are you, 38?
And should I take it off?
What is this thick head of hair? It's barely a wrinkle. Glowing.
The ring light bleaches out all the wrinkles.
Age is a number. Age is a number.
You know what? The only people who say age is a number are old geezers. No one who's 25 ever says age is a number. It's all old bastards who say that just to make themselves feel better.
And numbers are infinite and always increasing.
Yeah. Age is shit is what really I should be saying. Let's see. I've been watching Fauda. Have you guys watched Fauda on Netflix?
It sounds Scandinavian.
No, it's an Israeli show about the kind of fight between like Mossad, Shin Bet, the Secret Service, and the Palestinians. And it's really intense, really amazing.
Wow. I've been watching Dairy Girls.
Super intense, totally intense.
Well, it's about the troubles in Ireland and the depoliticization through the lens of Catholic schoolgirls. It's great.
Well, what's the like? Actually, what I will say is beautiful, and it's kind of like I was going to say it's porridge porn, and I don't really know what that means. But
yeah, me neither.
All creatures great and small.
Oh, that's great. Yes, the OG one.
Yeah, no, the reissue.
Hang on, all creatures great and small. Is that the Durrell one set in Greece?
No. All creatures great and small is set in Yorkshire about a vet in the 1930s in England. But what's beautiful about it is it's so kind of consistently like. The biggest drama is there's a breech birth in pasture 3 with a sheep or something.
Oh.
It's like it's like the nicest cup of tea and the nicest pair of slippers you've ever had. And so there's so much anxiety in the world that you just sit down, you watch All Creatures Great and Small, and you just feel good about you just want to, you feel amazing.
You want to move to a farm.
Yeah.
Harriet, James
Italian countryside.
Yeah, James Harriet, exactly.
Yeah, I remember there's a new version of it.
Yeah. The old one's amazing, but the new one is equally lovely.
Right, on it. Good call. And what was the other one? Fauda.
Founder is the opposite, which is high tension, political stuff, all people being shot left, right, and center, pain, anguish, all the rest of it. So
this is the pendulum.
What's that?
The pendulum of your life.
That's right. Yeah.
Solid. I think that's all we need. I mean, we've got Sunday night sorted.
Well, geezers, thanks so much.
Thank you, mate.
Look at that. Phil, what a guy. I don't know what else to say about him that he didn't say about himself.
Your specificity kills me, Felix. It's just so much
He
detail.
talks about watches, cars, and or visual arts.
You say so little without saying anything at all.
You say it best when you say nothing at all.
And
And
Irishman.
how do people, get in touch with us if they want to complain about the various hateful things Phil said?
That's not at all the case. But otthepodcast@gmail.com if you want to email us. Otherwise, you can jump on our Discord, which we will link up. Of course, it's a great time and a lot of fun to be had there. Instagram is ot.podcast. And of course, Felix, 5-star reviews. Make sure you share the Phil episode. It helps us. It helps.
It's very fulfilling.
Oh, mate. Pedro would be proud. All right, we'll see you all next week.